Rachel Morrison stared at her husband's phone with trembling hands, the evidence of his betrayal glowing on the screen like an open wound. 3 different conversations with 3 different women, all explicitly romantic, all behind her back. The messages dated back months. Her chest tightened as if the air had suddenly been sucked from the room. After 9 years of marriage, was this how it would end? With a carelessly unlocked phone and devastating text messages that shattered everything she thought she knew about her life with Ulysses. She'd never meant to invade his privacy. The thought had never even crossed her mind until that morning when his phone kept buzzing incessantly while he showered. Rachel had merely picked it up to silence it when the notifications appeared on the screen. Messages from someone named Cassandra, with words and emojis that no business associate would ever send. One swipe to quiet the phone had revealed everything. Rachel sank onto the edge of their king-sized bed, the same bed they'd shared for nearly a decade, the mattress still warm from where Ulysses had been sleeping just 30 minutes earlier. At 37, she had given up her executive career when they married, believing they were building something permanent together. She had trusted him completely, never questioning his late nights or weekend client meetings. Now, looking back, her trust seemed painfully naive. The shower water stopped running. Rachel didn't move, didn't attempt to hide what she'd discovered. She needed to see his face when confronted with the truth. The bathroom door opened, releasing a cloud of steam as Ulysses emerged with a towel wrapped around his waist, his salt and pepper hair still dripping. "Hey, I was thinking we could—" His words died instantly when he saw his phone in her hands and the expression on her face. For just a moment, genuine fear flashed in his eyes before being quickly replaced by something harder, more defensive. "Why are you going through my phone?" he demanded, striding across the room to snatch the device from her grasp. "I wasn't going through anything. It wouldn't stop buzzing, and when I picked it up," Rachel's voice cracked. "Cassandra seems very fond of you. So do Madison and Erica." Ulysses's jaw tightened as he glanced at the screen, then back at Rachel. She expected denial, expected him to fabricate some elaborate explanation. What she didn't expect was what came next. "So?" The single word hung in the air between them, breathtaking in its callousness. "So?" Rachel repeated, hardly believing what she was hearing. "You're having affairs with multiple women, and all you can say is, 'so?'" Ulysses sighed dramatically, as if she were a child failing to grasp a simple concept. He sat down at the edge of the bed, maintaining a calculated distance between them. "Look, Rachel, we've been married for 9 years. You know how it is. Things get routine." "Routine?" The word felt like acid on her tongue. "Is that how you justify betraying our vows?" "Oh, come on." Ulysses stood again, pacing the room as he tossed his phone onto the dresser. "It's not like that. It's just, I'm a man with needs. And honestly, open relationships for men are normal these days. Everyone's doing it. It's just that most wives don't know." He shrugged, as if this statement were the most reasonable thing in the world. "I still come home to you, don't I?" Rachel felt something inside her break. Not her heart, which was already shattered, but something deeper. Her sense of who they were together, of what their marriage meant. "You think this is normal? That I should accept this?" "You're overreacting," Ulysses said, pulling clothes from the closet with deliberate calm. "Besides, what would you do without me? You haven't worked in years. Our house, the cars, the vacations, that's all from my income." His voice softened, taking on a patronizing tone that made Rachel's skin crawl. "I take care of you, Rachel. These other women, they're just entertainment. They don't mean anything." Rachel stood, her legs unsteady but her resolve suddenly crystal clear. "I want you out of this house. Today." Ulysses laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. "You're not thinking clearly. This is my house, remember? My name on the mortgage. Where exactly would I go? I don't care. A hotel. Your brother's place. One of your girlfriend's apartments. Just not here." Rachel's voice was surprisingly steady now, fueled by a growing anger that burned away her initial shock. "And what about you? What will you do? How will you pay the bills?" His smile was smug, confident in his financial hold over her. For the first time since discovering the messages, Rachel felt a glimmer of uncertainty. He was right about one thing. She had been financially dependent on him since retiring from her career. Their prenuptial agreement had seemed reasonable at the time, protecting his assets in case of divorce. Now it loomed like a trap, ready to leave her with almost nothing after nearly a decade of marriage. "I'll figure it out," she said, more confidently than she felt. "But I won't live with a man who cheats on me and has the audacity to claim it's normal." Ulysses sighed, checking his watch. "Look, I have meetings all day. We can continue this ridiculous conversation tonight. You'll have calmed down by then." He dressed quickly, selecting one of his expensive tailored suits with practiced precision. "And, Rachel, don't do anything stupid while I'm gone. Remember that everything we have, everything you have, comes from me." After he left, the house fell into a silence so complete that Rachel could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway, marking the seconds of her marriage's death. 9 years reduced to text messages and casual betrayal. She moved through the rooms like a ghost, touching the furniture, the artwork, the photographs of their life together, wondering how much of it had been real and how much had been a convenient arrangement for Ulysses. In their home office, she opened his desk drawer and found a stack of credit card statements he'd kept from her. More evidence of his double life: expensive restaurants, hotel charges, jewelry purchases on dates that didn't align with her birthday or their anniversary. The scope of his deception was staggering. Rachel reached for her phone and scrolled to a name she hadn't called in weeks: Kimberly Vaughn. They'd been friends since college, but had drifted somewhat after Rachel's marriage. Kimberly had never particularly liked Ulysses, a fact that had created a subtle tension between the friends. Now, Rachel realized that Kimberly's instincts had been right all along. Kimberly answered on the third ring. "Rachel, is everything okay?" Her friend's concern was immediate, as if she'd been expecting this call for years. "No," Rachel admitted, her voice finally breaking. "Nothing is okay. I need your help, Kim. Not just as my friend, but as my lawyer." "I'll be there in 30 minutes, Kimberly said, without hesitation. "Don't touch anything else, and don't call him. Wait for me." Rachel sat in the living room, watching the minutes tick by on that antique grandfather clock that Ulysses had insisted they needed for the foyer. $44,000 for a clock, while he had apparently been spending who knew how much on his mistresses. The thought made her stomach turn. When Kimberly arrived, she swept into the house like a force of nature, 5 feet 4 inches of fierce loyalty and legal expertise. She wore her auburn hair in a sleek bob that framed her sharp features and carried her ever-present leather briefcase. One look at Rachel's face told her everything. "That son of a bitch," she said, setting down her briefcase and pulling Rachel into a tight hug. "What happened?" Rachel explained everything. The messages, Ulysses's shocking response, his financial threats. Kimberly listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each detail. "And he actually said, 'Open relationships for men are normal these days?'" Kimberly asked incredulously. Rachel nodded, the words still stinging. "Like I should just accept it. Like I'm the unreasonable one for being upset." Kimberly took a deep breath, her attorney mind clearly already working through options. "Okay, first things first. We need to secure your position. Has he ever been violent? Any reason to file for a protective order?" "No, never physical. Just emotionally dismissive, controlling with money." "Financial abuse is still abuse," Kimberly said firmly. "And from what you've told me, he's been gaslighting you for years." She opened her briefcase and pulled out a legal pad. "We need to be strategic about this, Rachel. The prenup complicates things, but it's not insurmountable. I need you to tell me everything about your finances, joint accounts, credit cards, investments, property. As they talked through the details, a plan began to form in Rachel's mind. Not just for survival, but for something more. Something that would teach Ulysses a lesson about betrayal in a language he would understand. "Him," she said, interrupting their discussion about asset division. What if there was a way to show Ulysses exactly how it feels to be deceived, to give him a taste of his own medicine? Kimberly looked up from her notes, a slow smile spreading across her face. "I'm listening. He thinks he's so clever, juggling these women, believing none of them matter beyond what they can give him. What if we created someone he couldn't resist? Someone who didn't actually exist? What are you suggesting?" Kimberly leaned forward, intrigued. "I've been reading about these AI programs that can create incredibly realistic images of people. What if we created the perfect woman, his perfect woman, and made him fall for her?" Rachel's voice grew stronger as the idea took shape. "He values image above everything. Imagine if he invested time, emotion, maybe even money into someone who wasn't real." Kimberly's eyes widened, her legal pad temporarily forgotten. "That's brilliant, and potentially completely legal, depending on how we structure it." She tapped her pen against her chin thoughtfully. "We'd need to be careful not to cross any lines into fraud, but we could give him exactly what he deserves." Rachel finished. "A relationship as false as the one he's built with me." The two women looked at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. What they were considering wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice, about balance restored. And perhaps, for Rachel, it was about reclaiming some of the power Ulysses had taken from her over the years. "If we do this," Kimberly said carefully, "we do it right. No loose ends, no mistakes. And we need to make sure you're protected legally every step of the way." Rachel nodded, feeling the first stirrings of hope since discovering those devastating messages. "I trust you. And honestly, Kim, I need this. I need to show him that he can't just discard 9 years of my life and expect me to thank him for the privilege." As the afternoon light filtered through the expensive curtains Ulysses had insisted on, the two friends began to craft a plan that would change everything. A plan centered around a woman who didn't exist, but who would become very real to Ulysses Morrison in the weeks to come. The creation of Kimberly Vaughn, the other Kimberly Vaughn, began that very evening in Rachel's home office. The real Kimberly had gone home to gather supplies, returning with her laptop, several external hard drives, and a determined gleam in her eye. "I have a client who works in tech security," she explained, setting up her equipment on the desk. "He owes me a favor and agreed to help anonymously. He's sending over some software that can generate photorealistic images. Everything will be routed through secure servers, so it can't be traced back to us." Rachel watched as Kimberly's fingers flew across the keyboard, fascinated by her friend's efficiency. "Won't Ulysses be suspicious if this woman has the same name as you?" Kimberly smiled, a calculating expression that Rachel had never seen on her friend's face before. "Actually, that's intentional. When he eventually makes payments to her, and trust me, he will, the account will be in my name. If he ever checks, it'll seem legitimate. Plus, it adds a layer of plausible deniability. We can even have our AI Kimberly mention meeting another Kimberly Vaughn once, but dismissing it as a funny coincidence." For the next several hours, they worked on crafting their digital creation. The security expert sent them sophisticated AI software that could generate images based on specific parameters. They carefully selected features they knew would appeal to Ulysses. His type was painfully obvious from the women he'd been messaging. "Long hair," Rachel said quietly, scrolling through the options. "Always brunette with highlights. Athletic but curvy. Expensive looking." Kimberly nodded, inputting the parameters. "Like a luxury item. Because that's how he sees women, isn't it? As acquisitions." The statement hung in the air, its truth stinging Rachel more than she expected. How had she not seen this side of her husband during all their years together? "What about her personality?" Kimberly asked, redirecting Rachel's thoughts. "What kind of woman would be irresistible to him?" Rachel considered this carefully. Someone who makes him feel important, ambitious but in need of his guidance, independent enough to be a challenge, but ultimately impressed by him. The profile she was describing made her stomach turn. Someone who strokes his ego while making him work just hard enough to feel he's earned her attention. By midnight, they had generated dozens of images of their fictional Kimberly, in various outfits, settings, and poses, all carefully crafted to appear as natural photos taken over time. The AI program's capabilities were astonishing. Each image looked completely authentic, with consistent features across different lighting and angles. "Now we need a backstory," Kimberly said, rubbing her tired eyes. "Something compelling but not too extraordinary. Believable." They decided their creation would be an aspiring model and business graduate who had recently moved to the city to pursue bigger opportunities. She would be 29, young enough to flatter Ulysses, but not so young as to seem implausible for his social circle. She would have enough success to appear established, but still be hungry for advancement. The perfect opportunity for someone like Ulysses to play mentor and benefactor. "We should create her social media presence first," Kimberly suggested. "Build it up for at least 2 weeks before making any contact with him. It needs to look legitimate, with a history." Rachel nodded, her exhaustion temporarily forgotten in the surge of purpose. "I'll need to stay somewhere else during this time. I can't be around him knowing what we're planning." "You can stay at my place," Kimberly offered immediately. "I have a guest room, and frankly, I think you should be away from him anyway. We can use this time to gather evidence and prepare your legal position, regardless of how our little project turns out." The next morning, Rachel packed a suitcase while Ulysses was in the shower. He emerged to find her standing by the bedroom door, bag in hand. "What's this?" he asked, his tone more annoyed than concerned. "I'm staying with Kimberly for a while. I need space to think." Ulysses rolled his eyes. "You're still overreacting. But fine, take your little time out if you need it. Just remember what I said about our financial situation." "I remember everything, Ulysses," Rachel replied, her voice steady. "More than you realize." During the following 2 weeks, Rachel barely spoke to her husband beyond necessary text messages about household matters. Meanwhile, Kimberly Vaughn, model and entrepreneur, came to life online. They created an Instagram account with carefully dated posts going back 18 months, showing a curated life of photo shoots, business meetings, fashionable outings, and aspirational quotes. The real Kimberly's tech contact helped them with the more technical aspects, adding natural metadata to the images, creating realistic patterns of posting and engagement, even generating a small following of actual accounts who would interact with the profile through a network of bots. "It's amazing how convincing this looks," Rachel remarked, scrolling through the fictional Kimberly's Instagram feed. The images showed a beautiful, confident woman building her career and enjoying an enviable lifestyle, exactly the type of person Ulysses would want to conquer. "People see what they want to see," the real Kimberly replied, "especially men like Ulysses. They don't look too closely at things that flatter their egos." On day 15 of their operation, they implemented the next phase of their plan. The AI Kimberly began following several local business accounts related to real estate development, Ulysses' field. Then, as if by chance, she followed Ulysses himself. They knew he would notice. Ulysses checked his follower count obsessively, always pleased when it increased. Sure enough, within hours, he had followed the fictional Kimberly back and liked several of her recent photos. "He took the bait," Rachel said, watching the notifications appear. A strange feeling washed over her, part satisfaction, part sorrow that her marriage had come to this. "Now we wait," Kimberly advised. "Let him make the first move. Men like him always do." They didn't have to wait long. The next day, Ulysses sent a direct message to the AI Kimberly. "Great profile. Always good to connect with ambitious people in the city. Are you new to the area?" With careful consideration, they crafted a response. "Relatively new. Moved here 6 months ago for better modeling opportunities, and to expand my business network. Still finding my way around. And thank you. Your projects look impressive." The conversation developed naturally over the next few days. Ulysses was predictably responsive to flattery about his business acumen, eagerly offering advice and insights when the fictional Kimberly expressed admiration for his success. "It's almost too easy," Rachel observed, watching her husband fall into their trap with such predictability. "He's using the exact same lines he probably used on those other women. And probably on you, once upon a time," Kimberly added gently. Rachel fell silent, remembering the early days of her relationship with Ulysses. He had been so charming, so attentive. Had it all been a performance even then? Had she ever really known him? By the end of the third week, Ulysses was messaging the AI Kimberly daily. He had begun suggesting they meet for coffee or drinks, which they deflected with carefully crafted excuses. A busy photo shoot schedule, meetings with potential business partners, a short trip out of town. "We need to maintain the chase," Kimberly explained. "Keep him invested without giving him what he wants too easily." They added another layer to their creation by generating short video clips using advanced AI software. These brief moments, Kimberly laughing, turning toward the camera, saying a quick hello, added an unsettling verisimilitude to their fiction. The technology wasn't perfect, but it was convincing enough for someone who wanted to believe. "I feel like Dr. Frankenstein," Rachel murmured as they reviewed a particularly lifelike video. "We've created a person out of nothing." "Not nothing," the real Kimberly corrected her. "Out of his own worst instincts. She's exactly what he wants, which says everything about who he is." As the conversations between Ulysses and the fictional Kimberly grew more intimate, they began to lay the groundwork for the financial aspect of their plan. The AI Kimberly mentioned an opportunity to be featured in a prestigious fashion campaign, but lamented the cost of updating her portfolio with a renowned photographer. "It's a $10,000 investment," they had her right, "but it could lead to contracts worth 10 times that. Just trying to decide if it's worth dipping into my savings right now." Ulysses responded exactly as they'd predicted. "Sometimes you have to spend money to make money. The right investments in yourself pay dividends. I'd be happy to offer some financial advice if you'd like." The fictional Kimberly expressed grateful surprise, but polite reluctance. "That's so kind, but I couldn't possibly impose. I'm sure someone as successful as you has better things to do than help out a struggling model." "It would be my pleasure," came Ulysses's quick reply. "Maybe we could discuss it over dinner when you're back in town." They maintained this delicate balance for another week, keeping Ulysses interested while never quite granting him the meeting he wanted. The AI Kimberly shared more details about her career aspirations, her supposed background, and the challenges she faced as a woman trying to break into both modeling and business. During this time, Rachel continued staying at Kimberly's apartment, using the distance from Ulysses to strengthen her resolve. She consulted with financial advisors recommended by Kimberly, documenting the marital assets and exploring her options under the constraints of their prenuptial agreement. "He's been moving money between accounts," Rachel discovered one evening, reviewing bank statements she'd managed to access. "Large sums, especially in the last 6 months." Kimberly frowned, making notes. "That could work in our favor if we can prove he was hiding assets. Courts don't look kindly on that during divorce proceedings." The word divorce still caused a pang in Rachel's chest, despite everything. 9 years of her life, given to a man who could dismiss their vows so casually. Sometimes, late at night, she wondered if their plan was taking things too far. But then, she would remember Ulysses' smug face as he told her that open relationships for men are normal these days, and her resolve would harden once more. On the 1-month anniversary of discovering Ulysses' infidelity, they decided it was time for the next phase. The AI Kimberly finally agreed to a video call with Ulysses, claiming she was still out of town but eager to connect more personally. For this, they needed more sophisticated technology. Kimberly's tech contact provided them with advanced AI software that could generate a realistic video simulation responding to audio input in real time. It wasn't flawless. There would be occasional lags or slightly unnatural movements, but they planned to blame it on poor internet connection. Rachel sat out of camera range as Kimberly managed the controls, inputting responses to Ulysses's questions and comments. They had prepared extensively, anticipating his likely conversation topics and having responses ready. The call connected, and there was Ulysses in his home office, Rachel's home, straightening his tie and checking his appearance before the AI Kimberly appeared on his screen. Rachel felt a surge of both disgust and vindication seeing him primp for another woman while sitting at the desk where they had once planned their future together. Kimberly, finally. His voice was warm, intimate, a tone Rachel hadn't heard from him in years. You look even more beautiful in motion. The AI Kimberly smiled, the expression eerily natural. Thank you, Ulysses. It's nice to finally talk face to face, so to speak. Sorry about the connection. Hotel Wi-Fi isn't the best. The conversation flowed with surprising ease. Ulysses was clearly enchanted, leaning toward the screen and laughing at all the right moments. The AI responded with perfect timing, complimenting his insights and asking questions that let him talk about his favorite subject, himself. When the fictional Kimberly mentioned again her dilemma about the expensive portfolio shoot, Ulysses didn't hesitate. Let me help you with that. Consider it an investment in your future. I recognize talent when I see it. Oh, I couldn't possibly accept that, the AI demurred, exactly as they'd scripted. That's such a generous offer, but we barely know each other. I'd like to change that, Ulysses replied smoothly, and I believe in supporting people with potential. 10,000 is nothing if it helps launch your career to the next level. Rachel watched, mesmerized, as her husband offered such a substantial sum to a woman who didn't even exist. Money he had always claimed they needed to budget carefully when Rachel wanted to renovate their kitchen or take a vacation. After the call ended, Rachel and Kimberly sat in stunned silence for a moment. He didn't even hesitate, Rachel finally said. $10,000. Just like that. Men like Ulysses see money as power, Kimberly replied, shutting down the software. He's not giving it out of generosity. He's establishing control, creating a debt he expects to be repaid, one way or another. So what now? Rachel asked. Kimberly's expression was resolute. Now we see just how far he's willing to go for a woman who doesn't exist. The next day, they had the AI Kimberly send Ulysses a message expressing heartfelt gratitude for his offer, along with her account details. Actually, an account Kimberly had set up for the purpose, under her name, but separate from her personal finances. Within hours, Ulysses had transferred the full $10,000. I know an excellent photographer who can capture your essence perfectly, he wrote afterward. When you're back in town, I'd be happy to introduce you. That would be wonderful, they responded. I should be back next week. Perhaps we could finally meet in person then? His eager reply came immediately. I'll clear my schedule. Just say when and where. As Rachel stared at the confirmation of the bank transfer, a complex emotion washed over her. Not just satisfaction at their plan's success, but a profound sadness for what her marriage had become. The man who had vowed to cherish her was throwing money at a digital phantom while threatening her financial security. We're not done yet, Kimberly reminded her gently. This is just the beginning. The following week brought their plan into its next crucial phase. They arranged for the AI Kimberly to message Ulysses that she had returned to town and was eager to finally meet him in person. The fictional model suggested an upscale restaurant on the other side of the city, far from any places Rachel and Ulysses normally frequented. Make the reservation for 7:30, they wrote. I have a meeting that should end by 7, so I'll come straight there. Ulysses confirmed immediately, his eagerness palpable even through text. Rachel imagined him rearranging his schedule, perhaps canceling actual business meetings to accommodate this fictional woman. The thought brought a grim satisfaction. Now comes the delicate part, the real Kimberly said, as they finalized the details of their plan. "We need to make sure he's fully invested before the letdown." Throughout the day of the planned meeting, they had the AI Kimberly send occasional updates, excitement about finally meeting, a photo of her supposedly getting her hair done for the evening, a message about selecting the perfect outfit. Each communication was calculated to heighten Ulysses's anticipation. An hour before the reservation, Rachel and Kimberly positioned themselves in Kimberly's car across from the restaurant, watching for Ulysses's arrival. They didn't have to wait long. 30 minutes before the scheduled time, his black Mercedes pulled into the parking lot. Even from a distance, Rachel could see that he had dressed impeccably in one of his most expensive suits. "He's never early for anything," Rachel remarked, watching him check his appearance in his car mirror before heading inside. "Not even our anniversary dinners." Kimberly squeezed her friend's hand supportively. "Remember why we're doing this." They waited until Ulysses had been seated. Then the AI Kimberly sent a message. "Running about 15 minutes late. Styling team took longer than expected. So excited to meet you." They watched through the restaurant windows as Ulysses checked his phone, smiled, and settled in to wait, ordering what appeared to be an expensive whiskey. 15 minutes passed, then 30. At the 45-minute mark, they sent another message. "I am so sorry, but there's been an emergency with a major client. They need me at a last-minute meeting that I absolutely cannot miss. I feel terrible about this. Can we reschedule for tomorrow? I promise to make it up to you." Through the window, they watched Ulysses's face fall as he read the message. His disappointment was visible even from a distance, but he quickly recovered, typing a response. "These things happen in business. I understand completely. Tomorrow works for me. Same time, same place." "He's hooked," Kimberly said quietly, as they watched him pay his bill and leave the restaurant. "He didn't even get angry about being stood up." "Because he thinks she's worth waiting for," Rachel replied, a hint of bitterness in her voice. "The chase is part of the thrill for him." The next evening, they repeated the process. Ulysses arrived at the restaurant even earlier than before, visibly eager. This time, they let him wait a full hour before sending a devastated message about a family emergency, requiring the AI Kimberly to fly to Chicago immediately. "My mother had a fall," they wrote. "I'm at the airport now. I feel absolutely horrible about this. Please forgive me. I'll be back in 3 days. Can I take you to dinner then to apologize properly?" Again, Ulysses responded with understanding and patience, completely foreign to the man Rachel had lived with for 9 years. "Family comes first," he wrote. "I hope your mother recovers quickly. I'll be here when you get back." Over the next 3 days, they maintained the illusion of the AI Kimberly being in Chicago, sending occasional updates about her fictional mother's condition and expressing growing excitement about returning to finally meet Ulysses. "He hasn't asked about me once during this whole time," Rachel noted as they monitored Ulysses' communications. She had been staying officially at Kimberly's apartment for over a month now, communicating with her husband only about practical household matters. "He hasn't even questioned why I'm still not home." "Because he's completely absorbed in his new conquest," Kimberly replied. "Men like him compartmentalize. You're in one box, she's in another, and right now, her box is shinier." For their third attempt at a meeting, they changed tactics. The AI Kimberly suggested coming to Ulysses after a photo shoot that would supposedly end near his office downtown. This time, they didn't plan to stand him up completely. They had something more impactful in mind. On the appointed day, Rachel dressed carefully in a disguise Kimberly had helped her assemble, a stylish wig that transformed her shoulder-length brown hair into a sleek platinum blonde bob, colored contact lenses that changed her hazel eyes to blue, and makeup applied to subtly alter the appearance of her features. The overall effect was striking. She looked like herself, but different enough that a distracted man focused on meeting someone else entirely wouldn't immediately recognize her. "Are you ready for this?" Kimberly asked as they drove downtown. Rachel took a deep breath, steadying her nerves. I've been ready since the day I found those messages. They arrived at the upscale bar, where Ulysses was waiting for the woman who didn't exist. Through the window, Rachel could see him checking his watch and his phone alternately, clearly anxious about finally meeting the woman he'd been pursuing for weeks. "Remember the plan," Kimberly said, as Rachel prepared to enter. "You're just gathering information. Don't confront him yet." Rachel nodded, then walked into the bar with confident steps that belied her inner turmoil. She took a seat at the far end, angling herself so she could observe Ulysses without being obvious. He didn't even glance in her direction, so focused was he on the entrance, waiting for his digital phantom to materialize. After 15 minutes, the AI Kimberly sent a message. "I'm running late again. I'm so sorry. The shoot went over time. We'll be there in about 20 minutes. Order me a glass of Sauvignon Blanc." Rachel watched as Ulysses read the message, his face lighting up with relief. He immediately signaled the bartender and ordered 2 drinks, his usual bourbon and the requested wine. While he waited, Rachel observed her husband with the detached interest of a stranger. From this vantage point, she could see things she'd missed while living in his shadow. The way his eyes constantly assessed other women in the room, the self-satisfied tilt of his chin, the ostentatious way he displayed his expensive watch by repeatedly checking the time. Had he always been this transparent? After another 20 minutes, they sent the message that would set up their final play. "I'm so sorry, but something's come up that I absolutely cannot get out of. My agent just called with an emergency casting for a major campaign tomorrow, and I need to prepare tonight. I feel terrible about disappointing you again. Please let me make it up to you properly. Are you free Saturday evening? I'll come to you. Just tell me where." Rachel watched Ulysses read this message, saw the flash of frustration cross his face before he composed himself and typed a response. This time, his patience showed signs of wearing thin. "This is becoming a pattern, Kimberly. I understand emergencies happen, but I've rearranged my schedule 3 times now." They let him stew for a few minutes before responding. "You're right, and I feel awful. I promise Saturday will be different. I'm clearing my entire evening for you. No interruptions, no emergencies, just us." The mollified expression that softened Ulysses' features told Rachel everything she needed to know. He was still invested, still pursuing, still believing in the woman they had created from his own desires. "Saturday it is," he wrote back. "My place, 7 o'clock. I'll text you the address." Rachel slipped out of the bar while Ulysses was settling his bill, meeting Kimberly in the car outside. "He invited her to our house," Rachel said, her voice tight with anger. "Our home." Kimberly's expression hardened. "Then, that's where we'll end this." The next 2 days were spent finalizing the details of their concluding move. The AI Kimberly continued messaging Ulysses, building his anticipation for their Saturday meeting with carefully crafted texts that were by turns flirtatious, vulnerable, and admiring. "I can't stop thinking about finally meeting you," one message read. "I feel like I already know you so well. You've been so patient with me," said another. "Not many men would be so understanding." Each message was designed to feed Ulysses' ego while heightening his emotional investment in a woman who existed only as pixels on a screen. Meanwhile, Rachel met with Kimberly in her legal capacity, reviewing the documentation they had gathered over the past weeks. The evidence of Ulysses' affairs with real women, combined with his financial maneuvers to hide assets, provided leverage that partially offset the restrictions of their prenuptial agreement. And of course, there's the $10,000 he transferred to a model who doesn't exist, Kimberly noted, adding the bank statement to their growing file. Not illegal per se, since he sent it willingly, but certainly illuminating for a divorce court to see how casually he disperses marital funds to women who aren't his wife. As Saturday approached, Rachel felt a strange calm settle over her. The shock and pain of discovering Ulysses' betrayal had gradually transformed into something cooler and more resolute, a determination to reclaim her dignity and her future on her own terms. "Are you nervous?" Kimberly asked, As they reviewed their plan one final time on Saturday morning, Rachel considered the question carefully. Not nervous. Ready? I've been sleepwalking through my marriage for years without realizing it. This feels like finally waking up. The AI Kimberly sent her final messages to Ulysses throughout the day, confirming their meeting and expressing excitement. I have a special surprise for you, they wrote, knowing how the ambiguity would intrigue him. At 6:30 that evening, Rachel and the real Kimberly parked down the street from the house Rachel had shared with Ulysses for most of their married life. They watched as Ulysses arrived home from wherever he had been spending his day. Through the windows they could see him moving about, clearly preparing for his guest, straightening furniture, lighting candles, opening a bottle of wine to breathe. He never did that for me, Rachel observed quietly. Not even in the beginning. At exactly 7 o'clock, Kimberly squeezed Rachel's hand supportively. It's time. Remember, I'll be right behind you. Rachel approached her own front door with the strange sensation of being both an intruder and the rightful occupant. She had taken her key when she left, but chose to ring the doorbell instead. This was no longer about quietly slipping back into her old life. This was about confrontation and closure. The look on Ulysses's face when he opened the door expecting the AI Kimberly and found his wife instead was everything Rachel had hoped for. Confusion quickly followed by alarm. Rachel, what are you doing here? He glanced past her, down the street, clearly looking for someone else. I live here, remember? Rachel replied, her voice steady as she stepped past him into the foyer. The house smelled of the expensive cologne he wore only for special occasions. Candles flickered in the living room, and she could see 2 wine glasses set out on the coffee table. Or did you forget you had a wife while you were preparing for your date? Ulysses recovered quickly, his expression shifting to annoyance. I thought you were staying with Kimberly indefinitely. You can't just show up unannounced. I have a business associate coming over to discuss a project. A business associate? Rachel echoed, raising an eyebrow. Would that be Kimberly Vaughn, the model? The color drained from Ulysses' face. How do you know about her? Rachel finished for him. I know quite a lot about Kimberly. Her modeling career, her business aspirations, her grateful acceptance of your $10,000 investment in her future. Ulysses's shock gave way to defensive anger. You've been spying on me? Going through my phone again? That's a complete invasion of privacy, Rachel. Privacy? Rachel laughed, the sound hollow in the carefully arranged room. Like the privacy you respected when you were having affairs with multiple women? When you told me that open relationships for men are normal these days? Before Ulysses could respond, the doorbell rang again. His eyes darted to the door, panic evident in his expression. Aren't you going to answer that? Rachel asked innocently. It might be your business associate. Ulysses hesitated, clearly torn between dealing with Rachel and greeting the woman he believed was finally arriving after weeks of anticipation. Go ahead, Rachel urged. I'm curious to meet her too. With visible reluctance, Ulysses moved to the door and opened it. Standing on the threshold was the real Kimberly Vaughn, elegant in a tailored suit, her auburn hair framing her face and a leather briefcase in her hand. Hello, Ulysses, she said coolly. I believe you've been expecting me. The confusion on Ulysses's face deepened to bewilderment as he looked between the 2 women. I don't understand. You're not… He pulled out his phone, bringing up the photos of the AI Kimberly they had created. This isn't you. No, Kimberly agreed, stepping inside and closing the door behind her. That's not me. That woman doesn't exist. What do you mean she doesn't exist? Ulysses demanded, his voice rising as he looked frantically between Rachel and Kimberly. I've been talking to her for weeks. We've had video calls. I've seen her photos. You've been talking to an artificial intelligence program, Rachel explained, a strange calm washing over her as she finally revealed their deception. Every image, every video, every word was generated by AI and managed by us. Ulysses stared at her in disbelief, then let out a forced laugh. That's ridiculous. That's not possible. Isn't it? Kimberly opened her briefcase and removed a tablet. With a few taps, she brought up the dashboard of the AI program they had been using, showing the interface where they had generated responses to his messages. Advanced technology makes many things possible these days, Ulysses, including creating a completely fictional woman, tailored to appeal to your specific preferences. The blood drained from Ulysses's face as he looked at the screen, recognition dawning in his eyes. You created a fake person to… what? Entrap me. This is insane. This is exactly what you deserve, Rachel cut in, her voice steady despite the emotion churning inside her. You betrayed our marriage with multiple affairs, then had the audacity to tell me it was normal and that I should accept it. Ulysses' shock quickly morphed into anger. He jabbed a finger toward the tablet in Kimberly's hands. This is fraud. You tricked me into sending money to a non-existent person. I'll have both of you arrested. Actually, Kimberly replied calmly, slipping back into her role as an attorney. No fraud has been committed. You transferred funds willingly to an account under my real name. At no point did we make any false claims about how that money would be used. In fact, if you check those conversations carefully, you'll notice our creation never actually asked you for money. You offered it, quite enthusiastically. This is extortion, Ulysses insisted, his voice rising. No, Kimberly corrected him. Extortion would involve threatening to do something harmful, unless you paid us. We made no such threats. You chose to pursue what you believed was a young model. You chose to offer financial assistance. All of those were your decisions, made freely. Rachel watched her husband's face as the reality of his situation became clear to him. She had expected to feel triumphant in this moment, but instead found herself feeling oddly detached, as if observing a stranger's downfall rather than the man she had loved for nearly a decade. Why? Ulysses finally asked, his anger momentarily giving way to genuine confusion. Why go to all this trouble? Because you needed to understand what it feels like to be deceived, Rachel answered simply. To invest emotionally in something that isn't real. That's what you've done to me for years. Presented a false version of our marriage while secretly pursuing other women. Ulysses scoffed, some of his usual arrogance returning. So, this was all about revenge? Making me look foolish? Congratulations, you've had your fun. Now, get out of my house. Our house, Rachel corrected him. And this isn't just about revenge, Ulysses. It's about consequences. As if on cue, Kimberly reached into her briefcase again and removed a thick envelope. Speaking of which, these are divorce papers. I've taken the liberty of drawing them up based on evidence of your multiple infidelities, financial improprieties, and emotional abuse. Emotional abuse? Ulysses repeated incredulously. That's absurd. Is it? Rachel asked. You've controlled our finances to keep me dependent on you. You've gaslit me about your affairs. You've dismissed my feelings and concerns as overreactions. That's textbook emotional abuse, Ulysses. And courts are increasingly recognizing these patterns, Kimberly added professionally, especially when they're accompanied by financial misconduct, such as hiding assets from your spouse, which we have documented extensively. She gestured to another section of her briefcase. Bank transfers? Secret accounts? Suspicious cash withdrawals? It creates a compelling picture. Ulysses looked between them, his expression hardening. The prenup has provisions that can be challenged based on your behavior, Kimberly finished for him. Infidelity clauses, good faith requirements. Your actions have undermined its enforceability in several key areas. For a moment, genuine fear flashed across Ulysses's face before he masked it with contempt. This is blackmail. No, Rachel said firmly. This is justice. You broke our vows and tried to make me believe I was wrong for objecting. You threatened me financially while secretly spending our money on other women. And when presented with someone who matched your ideal, young, beautiful, ambitious, but needy, you didn't hesitate to pursue her. even inviting her to our home. She gestured around the carefully prepared living room with its candles and wine. You never made this kind of effort for me, not even in the beginning. What does that say about the man I married? Ulysses' jaw tightened. You've clearly made up your mind about me. No, Ulysses. You showed me who you really are. I just finally opened my eyes and saw it. Kimberly stepped forward, placing the divorce papers on the coffee table beside the wine glasses he had set out. You have two options. Sign these papers, which offer a fair division of assets despite your attempts to hide them. Or we take this to court, where all of your affairs, financial manipulations, and— She glanced at her tablet. Your eager pursuit of a fictional model will become public record. You wouldn't, Ulysses challenged, though uncertainty had crept into his voice. Your reputation. My reputation will survive, Rachel cut in. Will yours? What will your business associates think when they learn you transferred $10,000 to a woman who doesn't exist? What will your family say when they see the messages you sent while still wearing your wedding ring? A heavy silence fell over the room as Ulysses absorbed the full implications of his position. Rachel could almost see the calculations running behind his eyes, weighing the cost of compliance against the price of resistance. I need time to review these with my own attorney, he finally said, gesturing to the divorce papers. Of course, Kimberly agreed smoothly. You have 48 hours. After that, we proceed with filing in court. Rachel moved toward the stairs. I'll be collecting some of my things while I'm here. You're not staying? Ulysses asked, and for a brief moment, something almost like regret flickered across his face. No, Rachel replied quietly. I haven't been staying for a long time, Ulysses. Not really. Not in the ways that matter. Upstairs in what had once been their bedroom, Rachel methodically gathered clothing, jewelry, and personal mementos. She worked with efficient detachment, selecting only what truly mattered to her, and leaving behind the expensive gifts Ulysses had given her over the years. The designer dresses he had chosen to display her as his perfect wife, the jewelry that marked occasions but held no real sentiment. She paused at their dresser, looking at a framed photo from their wedding day. They had looked so happy, so full of promise. Had it all been an illusion from the start? Or had something real between them simply withered under the weight of Ulysses's ego and entitlement? A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Kimberly stood in the doorway, concern evident in her expression. Are you okay? She asked gently. Rachel considered the question carefully. I don't know yet, but I think I will be. He's downstairs making angry phone calls, Kimberly reported, probably to his attorney. From what I can hear, he's realizing his position isn't as strong as he thought. Rachel nodded, returning to her packing. He always underestimates everyone but himself. It's his greatest weakness. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, Kimberly helping Rachel sort through her belongings and pack them into suitcases. As they moved through the rooms that had been Rachel's home for 9 years, memories surfaced and receded like waves. Some painful, others bittersweet. I keep thinking about all the signs I missed, Rachel confessed as they finished packing. The late nights, the business trips that seemed to multiply, the way he grew distant when I asked about his day. I just didn't want to see it. That's not your fault, Kimberly assured her. We trust the people we love. That's not a failing. It's what makes you human. When they returned downstairs, Ulysses was waiting in the living room, his earlier bravado significantly diminished. The divorce papers sat on the coffee table where Kimberly had left them, apparently untouched. This is really what you want? He asked Rachel, his tone more subdued than before. This is what you created, she corrected him. Every choice you made led us here. Something shifted in Ulysses's expression. Not quite remorse, but perhaps the first glimmers of understanding. I never meant to hurt you, he said quietly. But you did, Rachel replied. And worse, when confronted with that hurt, you dismissed it. You made me feel like my pain was an inconvenience, like my expectations of fidelity were unreasonable. I thought, He began, then stopped, seemingly unable to find a justification that didn't sound hollow even to his own ears. "You thought you could have everything without consequences," Rachel finished for him. "Your successful career, your devoted wife at home, and your affairs on the side. You thought the rules that apply to everyone else somehow didn't apply to you." Ulysses didn't respond, his silence more telling than any protest could have been. "We'll be in touch about the papers," Kimberly said professionally. 48 hours, Ulysses. As they prepared to leave, Rachel took one last look around the house that had been her home. Strangely, she felt no attachment to the expensive furnishings, the carefully selected artwork, the designer kitchen she had rarely used. What she mourned wasn't this place or these things, but the years she had invested in a relationship built on sand. "One more thing," Rachel said, turning back to face Ulysses. "That $10,000 you sent to the fictional Kimberly? I've donated it to a women's shelter that helps victims of domestic abuse rebuild their lives. I thought you should know your money is finally doing something worthwhile." The look of stunned disbelief on Ulysses' face as they walked out the door brought Rachel no joy, but it did bring a sense of closure. She had not only stood up to his manipulation, but had transformed it into something positive, a small victory that felt more meaningful than their entire elaborate scheme. In Kimberly's car, Rachel finally allowed herself to exhale fully, releasing the tension she had been carrying for weeks. "Do you think he'll sign?" she asked, as they pulled away from the curb. "He will," Kimberly assured her. "Men like Ulysses value their public image above all else. He'll calculate that a quiet, negotiated divorce is far less damaging than a public court battle that exposes all his deceptions, including falling for an AI-generated woman." Rachel nodded, finding strange comfort in this assessment. "I never thought my marriage would end like this." "You people do," Kimberly replied gently. "But endings are also beginnings, Rachel. Remember that." As they drove through the darkening streets, Rachel felt an unfamiliar lightness beginning to replace the weight that had pressed upon her since discovering Ulysses's betrayal. It wasn't happiness. Not yet. The wound was still too fresh for that. But it was possibility. Freedom. The first tentative steps toward reclaiming herself. "Where to now?" Kimberly asked as they approached an intersection. Rachel considered the question, understanding it went beyond their immediate destination. "Forward," she said simply. "Just forward." In the weeks that followed, Ulysses did indeed sign the divorce papers, negotiating only minor adjustments to the terms Kimberly had drafted. Whether motivated by shame, pragmatism, or some belated recognition of his wrongdoing, he accepted the division of assets without the protracted legal battle he had initially threatened. Rachel found a small apartment of her own, modest compared to the house she had shared with Ulysses, but somehow more genuinely hers than that showcase home had ever been. She began reconnecting with friends who had drifted away during her marriage, rediscovering interests and passions that had been set aside to accommodate Ulysses's preferences and priorities. Most significantly, she started consulting for small businesses, leveraging the executive skills she had shelved when she married. The work brought not just income, but a sense of purpose and accomplishment that had been missing from her life for years. One evening, as Rachel and Kimberly shared dinner at Rachel's new place, celebrating the finalization of the divorce, Kimberly raised her glass in a toast. "To artificial intelligence," she said with a wry smile, "which ironically helped you find something very real. Yourself." Rachel laughed, clinking her glass against her friend's. "And to real intelligence," she added, "which is knowing when to walk away and when to start again." Outside her window, the city lights twinkled like stars, each one representing a possibility in the new life she was building. Not despite Ulysses' betrayal, but because of her response to it. The path forward was neither straight nor certain, but it was hers to choose, one step at a time. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Rachel stood at the window of her office, watching the autumn leaves swirl across the courtyard below. Her consulting business had expanded more rapidly than she could have anticipated, with 3 employees now occupying the small but stylish space she had leased downtown. The divorce settlement had provided seed money, but it was her own expertise and determination that had transformed that initial investment into a thriving enterprise. Her phone buzzed with a message from Kimberly. "Lunch today? Big news to share." Rachel smiled, typing back a quick confirmation. Their friendship had deepened through the crucible of her divorce, evolving into something more like sisterhood. Kimberly had been not just her legal advocate, but her emotional anchor during those turbulent months of separation and rebuilding. At noon, they met at their favorite cafe, a quiet place with excellent food and enough privacy for honest conversation. Kimberly arrived wearing a broad smile that piqued Rachel's curiosity immediately. "You look like you've won a major case," Rachel observed as they settled at their usual corner table. "Better," Kimberly replied, eyes sparkling with mischief. "Remember Jason Williams, that corporate ethics attorney I consulted with on the Westlake fraud case last year?" Rachel nodded, recalling the thoughtful, soft-spoken man Kimberly had mentioned several times. "The one who keeps sending you obscure legal journals with articles he thinks you'd find interesting?" "The very same. He finally worked up the courage to ask me to dinner." Kimberly's expression softened. "And Rachel, it was wonderful. Not just the dinner, but the conversation, the connection. He listens. Really listens. I'd forgotten what that feels like." "I'm thrilled for you," Rachel said genuinely, squeezing her friend's hand across the table. "You deserve someone who appreciates your brilliance." Their waiter arrived to take their orders, momentarily pausing the conversation. When he departed, Kimberly leaned forward with a more serious expression. "There's something else you should know," she said. "I heard from a colleague that Ulysses is leaving town. Apparently, his business has struggled since your divorce. There are rumors about questionable financial decisions, investors pulling out. Rachel absorbed this information with surprising equanimity. There had been a time when news of Ulysses' difficulties would have brought either satisfaction or concern. Now she felt only a distant acknowledgement, as if hearing about a character from a book she had finished reading months ago. "I'm not surprised," she said finally. "Ulysses always believed he was infallible. That makes for poor business judgment in the long run." "Are you okay?" Kimberly asked, studying her friend's face. "With hearing about him, I mean?" Rachel considered the question carefully. "Yes," she answered truthfully. "It's strange, but I've reached a point where Ulysses feels like part of a different life, one that happened to someone else. I can acknowledge that period without being defined by it anymore." Kimberly nodded approvingly. "That's what real healing looks like." After lunch, Rachel walked back to her office through streets painted with autumn colors. The air held that peculiar crispness unique to October, hinting at winter while still allowing for unexpected moments of warmth. Like life itself, she reflected, predictable in its general patterns but surprising in its daily manifestations. Her assistant greeted her with messages from potential clients and news that their most recent proposal had been accepted by a major local business. Rachel moved through her afternoon meetings with focused energy, her mind clear and decisive in a way that still occasionally surprised her. The fog of self-doubt that had accumulated during her years with Ulysses had burned away completely, revealing a confidence she had nearly forgotten she possessed. That evening, as Rachel prepared to leave the office, her phone rang with an unfamiliar number. She almost let it go to voicemail, then decided to answer on the third ring. "Rachel Morrison," she said, cradling the phone against her shoulder while gathering her belongings. "Miss Morrison, this is Eleanor Winters with the Women's Business Leadership Council." The voice was warm but professional. "I hope I'm not calling at an inconvenient time." Rachel paused, recognizing the name of a prestigious organization that mentored female entrepreneurs. "Not at all, Miss Winters. How can I help you?" "Actually, I'm hoping we might help each other." Your name has been mentioned repeatedly in our recent discussions about speakers for our annual conference. Your journey from corporate executive to retirement to building your own successful consultancy is exactly the kind of resilience narrative our attendees find inspiring. A strange feeling washed over Rachel, a mixture of pride, validation, and subtle irony. Her resilience narrative, as Eleanor called it, had been born of betrayal and deception. Yet here was this unexpected gift emerging from that painful soil. "I'd be honored to discuss it further," Rachel replied, surprising herself with the immediate acceptance. "Wonderful! Could we meet next week to talk details? Say, Wednesday morning?" After confirming the appointment and ending the call, Rachel sat at her desk for a long moment, allowing the significance of what had just happened to settle around her. She had been recognized not as Ulysses Morrison's ex-wife, but as Rachel Morrison, businesswoman and leader. The distinction felt monumental. On her drive home, Rachel's thoughts drifted to the complex sequence of events that had led her to this point. If Ulysses had never betrayed her, if she had never discovered those messages, would she be driving to their shared house right now, still unaware of his deceptions, still playing the role of supportive wife while he pursued other women? The thought was unsettling in its plausibility. The AI Kimberly, their digital creation designed to expose Ulysses' character, had inadvertently revealed something equally important about Rachel herself: her capacity for reinvention, her resilience, her fundamental worthiness apart from her marriage. In creating a fictional woman to teach Ulysses a lesson, she and Kimberly had helped Rachel rediscover the very real woman she had always been, beneath the roles she had accepted. At home, Rachel prepared a simple dinner and ate at her small balcony table, watching the city lights emerge as dusk deepened into evening. Her apartment wasn't large or luxurious like the house she had shared with Ulysses, but every inch of it reflected her own tastes and priorities. The artwork on the walls, the books on the shelves, the comfortable furniture arranged for conversation rather than show, all spoke of a life being lived authentically rather than performatively. After dinner, she opened her laptop to work on notes for a client presentation. A notification popped up from her banking app, the monthly statement for her business account. Rachel clicked it open, satisfaction flowing through her as she reviewed the healthy numbers. Her company was not just surviving but thriving, growing at a pace that exceeded even her optimistic projections. As she worked, her thoughts returned to the Women's Business Leadership Council invitation. What would she say to a room full of women looking for inspiration? What lessons had she learned that might benefit others facing their own crossroads? The answer came with unexpected clarity. Truth matters. Not just the truth about others, but the truth about oneself. For years, she had accepted Ulysses's version of their marriage, his assessment of her worth, his definition of her role. The most profound liberation had come not from the divorce settlement, but from reclaiming her own narrative. Rachel closed her laptop, suddenly feeling the need for fresh air and movement. She changed into comfortable clothes and walking shoes, then headed out into the evening. Her neighborhood was vibrant at this hour, with restaurants and cafes spilling warm light onto the sidewalks and people moving purposefully between destinations or lingering in conversation. As she walked, Rachel found herself observing couples, young lovers with their intense focus on each other, middle-aged pairs navigating life side by side, elderly couples moving in the synchronized rhythm that comes only with decades of shared existence. For the first time since her divorce, she allowed herself to wonder if that kind of genuine partnership might someday be possible for her again. Not now, she thought. Now was for consolidating her independence, for building her business, for rediscovering parts of herself that had been set aside during her marriage. But someday, perhaps, when the right person appeared, someone who valued truth and reciprocity, who saw her strength as an asset rather than a threat. Her phone chimed with a text from David Chen, a business contact she had met at a networking event last month. Just heard you'll be speaking at the WBLC conference. Congratulations! Well deserved. The message brought a smile to her face. David was intelligent, thoughtful, and possessed a quiet confidence that never veered into arrogance. They had spoken several times since that initial meeting, conversations that Rachel had enjoyed for their substance and mutual respect. Nothing romantic had developed, but she found herself appreciating the simple pleasure of connecting with someone who recognized her professional value without agenda or expectation. "Thank you," she texted back. "Just confirmed today. Nervous, but excited." His response came quickly. "You'll be brilliant. Your story matters." Those 3 simple words, "Your story matters," resonated deeply. For too long, Rachel had been a supporting character in Ulysses's narrative. Now she was the protagonist of her own life, making choices based on her values rather than someone else's expectations. When she returned to her apartment, Rachel felt a peaceful clarity that had been building gradually over the months since her divorce, but seemed to crystallize fully this evening. She wasn't defined by what had happened to her, the betrayal, the deception, the dissolution of her marriage. She was defined by how she had responded to those events, by the strength she had discovered within herself, by the new life she was creating day by day. In her bedroom, Rachel paused before the full-length mirror, really seeing herself perhaps for the first time in years. At 37, her face showed signs of the emotional journey she had traversed. A few new lines around her eyes, a certain gravity in her expression that hadn't been there before. But there was something else, too. Something that hadn't been visible during her marriage. A quiet confidence. A self-possession that no one could take from her because it came from within. She thought of the artificial Kimberly they had created. Beautiful, ambitious, crafted specifically to appeal to Ulysses's ego and desires. How hollow that creation had been compared to the complex, resilient, authentic woman reflected in the mirror before her now. The next morning, Rachel woke before her alarm, feeling unusually energized. She dressed with care, selecting a tailored suit that projected both competence and creativity, then headed to the office earlier than usual. She wanted time to refine her ideas for a new service her consultancy could offer, one focusing specifically on helping businesses owned by women navigate expansion and funding challenges. As she worked, her mind occasionally returned to Ulysses, not with bitterness or regret, but with something approaching gratitude. His betrayal had been the earthquake that had shattered her comfortable but constrained existence, forcing her to rebuild on stronger foundations. Without that catalyst, would she have found the courage to reclaim her professional identity? To discover that she was not just capable of independence, but actually thrived in it. At midday, Rachel met with her small team to discuss their growing client list and future directions. As she guided the conversation, drawing out ideas from each person and weaving them into a coherent strategy, she recognized a truth that brought a quiet smile to her face. This was who she had always been. Thoughtful, strategic, collaborative. These qualities hadn't disappeared during her marriage. They had simply been redirected toward supporting Ulysses's ambitions rather than pursuing her own. After the meeting, she received an email from Eleanor Winters with details about the upcoming conference. The theme was resilience and reinvention, words that captured Rachel's journey with almost uncanny precision. Attached was a list of potential talking points, including one that stood out sharply: turning betrayal into opportunity. Rachel sat back in her chair, considering how to approach such a personal topic in a professional context. She wouldn't name Ulysses or detail their private struggles. She wouldn't mention the elaborate scheme with the AI-generated woman, though that story might make for a compelling narrative. Instead, she would focus on the universal elements of her experience. The shock of discovering one's life is built on false assumptions, the challenge of separating one's identity from a failed relationship, the process of reclaiming personal and professional agency. As she began drafting notes for her speech, Rachel realized she was no longer the woman who had discovered those devastating messages 6 months ago. That woman had been defined primarily as Ulysses Morrison's wife, her sense of worth inextricably tied to his approval. The woman writing these notes was Rachel Morrison, business owner, mentor, friend, a whole person whose value came from within rather than from external validation. That evening, Rachel received a call from Kimberly, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Rachel, you won't believe this. The women's shelter received an anonymous donation of $50,000. The timing is suspicious. Right after I mentioned to Jason that we'd donated Ulysses $10,000 there." "You think it was Jason?" Rachel asked, surprised. "No," Kimberly replied with certainty. "I think it was Ulysses." Rachel sat down, momentarily speechless. "Why would he do that?" "I don't know," Kimberly admitted. "Guilt? Atonement? A tax write-off? Does it matter? The shelter can help 5 times as many women now." After the call ended, Rachel stood at her balcony, watching the city lights shimmer against the darkening sky. If the donation had indeed come from Ulysses, what did that mean? Had their scheme affected him more deeply than they had realized? Had some genuine reflection occurred in the aftermath of their confrontation? In the end, she decided, his motivations were no longer her concern. Whether Ulysses had changed or remained fundamentally the same, his journey was separate from hers now. What mattered was that something positive had emerged from their broken relationship. Not just the donation, but Rachel's own transformation. She thought about the artificial Kimberly they had created, a digital phantom designed to expose truth through deception. The irony wasn't lost on her. Sometimes illusions could reveal reality more clearly than direct confrontation. Their fictional creation had unmasked not only Ulysses' character, but the fundamental imbalance in their marriage, freeing Rachel to build something authentic from the ruins of that flawed foundation. As she prepared for bed that night, Rachel found herself thinking about the speech she would give at the conference. She would tell these women about loss and betrayal, yes, but more importantly about discovery, of strength previously untapped, of identity independent of relationship status, of the capacity for renewal that exists within even the most devastating circumstances. In the quiet darkness of her bedroom, Rachel whispered a truth that had been forming within her for months, finally crystallized into words. "Thank you, Ulysses, for showing me who you really were, and in the process, helping me remember who I really am." The morning sun streamed through her curtains, painting the room with promise. Rachel rose to face the day, not as a victim of betrayal or even as a survivor of deception, but simply as herself, complex, resilient, authentic. The artificial Kimberly had been created to teach Ulysses a lesson about consequences, but the most profound learning had been Rachel's own, that genuine strength comes not from controlling others, but from reclaiming oneself. Outside her window, the city was coming alive with possibilities, much like Rachel herself. Whatever came next, professional success, new relationships, continued growth, she would face it on her own terms, with clear eyes and an open heart. The artificial woman they had created had served her purpose and vanished back into the digital ether. The real woman, Rachel Morrison, finally and fully herself, was just beginning to shine. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? And if your heart tells you to, feel free to leave me a tip on Buy Me a Coffee. Just check the first pinned comment. Thanks for keeping me company and for the coffee, and I'll see you in the next story.